仲間がいるよ。ゾロ、ナミ、ウソップ、サージ、チョッパー、ロビン、フランキー、ブルック。僕には仲間がいる。
Several weeks ago, my family was struck with a tragedy. My wife, who was 12 weeks pregnant at the time, miscarried. Since then, I've learned that this experience is very common. About 1 in 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage. My wife is obviously heartbroken over this loss. If I'm being honest though, I really didn't think it would affect me. Now some of you may think that that's harsh, and you're not wrong, but I am much more of an analytical person. Much more so than I am an emotional one. When they were sure that my wife had miscarried, the doctor explained to us that there was nothing that we could have done to prevent this. At 12 weeks, the DNA simply matches up correctly or it doesn't. And in the case of our unborn child, it didn't. I thought that with that knowledge, I wouldn't really feel any loss about this. After all, this child wasn't viable anyway. But I was profoundly wrong about how I would feel. Maybe it was a combination of seeing my wife so upset and thinking about the plans that we had that would not be fulfilled now. But this news felt like a true loss, and it truly made me grieve over the death of my unborn child. As I said, this story is not unique to me, and you might be wondering, why are you being so vulnerable in a video that's meant to describe a manga? But I used this story to illustrate an example of my grief. All of us, no matter what walk of life we go through, we will experience some form of grief in this life. Grief is hard, and we often need help to get through that grief. In my own grief, despite my training in theology, the thing I thought about that helped me get through this moment was remembering Luffy and how he dealt with grief when he lost his brother. I think that this passage shows a realistic picture of grief and also a realistic way of moving through it. Through this video, I hope to communicate 3 things about grief. By looking at Luffy in this particular moment, and by that I mean chapter 590 of One Piece, I hope to convey that grief is hard, and we should acknowledge it as heavy and feel that instead of simply suppressing it. I want to acknowledge that we often need others to come alongside us and help direct us in the right way. And I want to talk about what it is that allows Luffy to move forward past his grief. And hopefully, it can help us too. For those of you who don't know the story of One Piece, I encourage you to go and read the entire story. This will certainly not be the last video I make about this story, because it is so impactful in so many different ways throughout its long runtime. I know it's long, but I promise that this journey is absolutely worth it. But for today, we will focus almost entirely on chapter 590. Leading up to this chapter, we saw the events of the Marineford War, one of the greatest conflicts that we see in the story. This conflict centered around our main character Luffy trying to save his older brother Ace. Through a series of events, it looks like Ace is going to be saved, but instead sacrifices his life to save Luffy, dying in the process. This event has traumatized Luffy, and the manga goes on to explain through a flashback how deep their relationship is as a found family. We now come back to the present, where Luffy is riddled with injuries and is rampaging through the forest. Luffy screams at the top of his lungs, "I'm so weak, I couldn't protect anybody." Jinbei tries to comfort him and warn him not to hurt himself any further. In response, Luffy replies, "It's my body, I'll do what I want to it." He proceeds to attempt to fight Jinbei, but it's not successful at all. Luffy is agonizing over his inability to stop this tragic situation. All throughout the story, we've seen him be confident in his strength and his ability to win the day. But now that ability has been tested and found lacking. And in his grief, Luffy has turned to self-destruction as an outlet for the pain that he feels. I wish I could say that this reaction is fictional, but it absolutely is real. First of all, I want to emphasize how badly losing someone can hurt. Whether, like me, it's an unborn child and a miscarriage, or it's a family member or a friend, losing someone hurts badly. We often find ourselves in a situation of asking, what would have happened if I would have acted differently? Could I have saved this person that I love? Just as Luffy agonizes over the fact he wasn't strong enough physically to save his brother, we agonize over all the things that we did or didn't do to help save our loved ones. And often when this grief becomes overwhelming, we turn to self-destruction. Alcoholism and chronic drug use are unfortunately ways that we see people play out their hurt and grief. Sometimes people become angry and abusive towards those around them, like Luffy lashing out at Jinbei. While this sometimes feels like the only way to cope with the tragedy, it is absolutely not. And we must find a better way to move past the pain instead of letting it destroy us. And to do that, one of the things that is vital is the help and comfort that comes from someone who is willing to patiently endure for our sake. And in this instance, that character is Jinbei. When Luffy has yelled at Jinbei to go away and leave him alone, Jinbei, in a calm voice, simply says, "I can't do that. I won't let you go on hurting yourself." Jinbei makes it clear here that his priority is the health and safety of Luffy. Even when Luffy becomes violent, Jinbei puts him down and holds him to keep him from harming himself. Jinbei calmly reminds Luffy about what Ace would have wanted him to do in this situation. When Luffy threatens violence, Jinbei calmly says, "Go ahead, if that's what it takes for you to calm down." He is fine to take the physical abuse if that will really lead to Luffy regaining control of himself. And after this altercation boils over, he holds Luffy down and tells him what he needs to hear. I think we need to dwell on this point for a minute, because it is so important for us to have other people who are here to help us when we grieve. In this moment, without Jinbei, Luffy may not move through this grief. Just as I said before, grief is overwhelming and can lead us to self-destruct. But how great it is when in that self-destruction, we have someone who is willing to sit with us, even when we lash out at them. And folks, if right now you're not struggling with grief, first of all, I'm happy for you. But I also want to challenge you. When you see your friends or family who are grieving, won't you come alongside them like this? Far too often, we're willing to abandon people simply because they said one wrong thing or looked at us the wrong way. But if we want to be a truly reliable friend, then when grief hits, we need to stay with them. I'm not at all saying that this is an easy thing to do. In fact, I think it's very difficult. But I think Jinbei's example here gives us a good picture of what it means to truly wrestle through something with someone, as he does here for Luffy. But it's not simply in sticking by Luffy's side that we see Jinbei be used as a friend. It is through the advice that he gives him that we can truly find a way through our grief. Jinbei says to Luffy, "It may be painful for now, Luffy, but fight it. Don't dwell on what you've lost. What's gone is gone forever. Try to remember what you still have." After this, Jinbei lets go of Luffy, and we see Luffy begin to tear up as he counts on his fingers. And then in a brilliant 2-page spread, we see Luffy look up with a background of all the members of the Straw Hat Pirates and say, I have my crew. After a tremendous loss, and one that most certainly could not have been made up for, we see the argument that allows Luffy to move through his grief. There's no doubt about it. Ace is dead and gone. He's not coming back no matter what. But in this, Jinbei needs Luffy to look at the things he still has instead of what he has lost, because it is looking toward those things that will allow Luffy to continue moving forward. When we are in grief, when we have lost someone precious to us, it's vital for us to remember who we still have. It can be hard to face the reality that our loved one is gone and they are not coming back. But in the face of that crippling reality, we must look toward what we still have. We must lean into the things that even after tragedy, we still can hold. For Luffy, all is not lost. He still has his crew, and they're waiting for him. And for us, no matter what spot you're in life, I'm sure you still have something. Hold on to that. Hold on to the people you still have, that you love and cherish. And it's through understanding this that we can move forward, because we understand that those we still have, we must work hard to cherish and love while we have them. Unfortunately, none of us will live forever, so all of us must face tragedy, and those we love will have to deal with our loss. But we can move forward by holding on to the ones that we still have. After Luffy exclaims the names of his crew members, he says to Jinbei, "I want to see them right now." When I was coming home from the hospital with my wife, having just experienced the tragedy of losing our unborn child, my thought went to this chapter. My thought went to what I still have. Even though I won't ever have this child, I still have my wife, and I still have my son. I related a lot with what Luffy says here, because the only thing I wanted to do after leaving that hospital was see my son again and hold him. Remembering this chapter helped me remember that I have to take care of my wife and my son. And then I can move past this grief by focusing on them and pouring into them. Folks, if you're struggling with grief, I'm so very sorry. I know it's hard, but keep struggling. Don't give up, and hold on to those that you still have, because they just may be your ticket through this grief. Thank you for watching this video, all the way to the end even. I hope that this has been helpful for some of you, and I look forward to seeing your comments. I hope to be able to do more videos in this style where I break down a moment from a story that we can learn from in real life. If you liked anything I had to say, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, where hopefully more videos like this will be made. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is Shonen Express, signing off.